All right, one moment while I go ahead and
PowerPoint.
share my screen.
It's just selected on the thing. Yeah, down, bottom. Yeah, there you go.
Let's see how that works.
It-
Okay.
It doesn't. That's what.
Okay, hang on 1 second. I'm not enjoying that. I'm gonna
No.
try something else.
See you guys later.
See ya.
Bye, Mama. What am I doing?
But still no.
Done.
Hey. You got it.
All right.
Doggo.
This is what I want. Okay, I now have everything set up so I can see y'all. I can see the PowerPoint. I can see Hunter. I can see the chat. So we're just going to dig right in there. Tonight, we're going to talk about what we call bridging the gap, which is this transitioning from pediatric or adolescent healthcare to adult care. Again, my name is Tim Markle. I am the parent of this young man who will introduce himself in a moment. I work with the Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs Program as the Southern Regional Center Director, as well as working with the Youth Health Transition Initiative. And so I'm kind of wearing two hats tonight. One of the reasons is because I just really enjoy talking about youth health transition and transition in general. Hence, we're doing the series. And who are you?
I am this wonderful presenter's son, Hunter Markle. I am the young adult that will be talking about healthcare transition with this guy, and he usually always wears about 4 caps, not 2. So tonight is only 2.
Which is kind of nice. That way, maybe I'll stay focused for a change.
Not going to happen.
I hope it does, for the sake of everybody who's watching.
That's what the recording is for.
Good point. So I am part of a larger primary network that's part of the Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs Network in Wisconsin. You'll see that we have 5 regional centers throughout Wisconsin. We work with the Well Badger Resource Center. Family Voices is a family advocacy organization. They put out some fantastic fact sheets that translate what I would call government ease into language that parents can understand, because it's a parent-run organization. Parent to Parent of Wisconsin is a parent matching organization where they train parents to support other parents. And so it's really cool because it's statewide, it's also national. And so even those parents with the rare disease could get matched with somebody else who's maybe a little further down the road than them. We have 2 national performance measures. One of them is medical home. And that is this concept of having families partner with their doctors and receive coordinated collaborative care. So we work with physicians and families to try to make that happen. ABC for Health is a public interest health law firm. And so they help us with health benefits and keeping us up to date on the ever-changing world of Medicaid and public benefits. And then finally, the Youth Health Transition, which is our other national performance measure. As I said, we have 5 regional centers in Wisconsin. Y'all are mostly from Rock County. And so you'll see that you are the southern edge, which makes sense because we go any further south, we're in Illinois. And it's a different system. So we're going to talk about Wisconsin's system tonight. And what we are talking about is the Health Transition Wisconsin, supporting youth to adult health care. You want to talk about my guy?
Yes, the abominable snowman that my dad calls the Yeti.
Yeah, I didn't find any good pictures of Yetis, so I went with the abominable snowman and called him Yeti.
Yep. And by the way, yes, you can count, and no, there is no prize if you do.
That's right, because of the fact there is no prize, because I never know what the right answer is. So please feel free to count the Yetis. So what is Health Transition Wisconsin, the Youth Health Transition Initiative? Well, we are here to ensure that high quality, developmentally appropriate healthcare services are available in an uninterrupted manner as the person moves from adolescence to adulthood. We very much focus on children and youth with special healthcare needs. And so your kiddos with chronic conditions, IEPs, 504s, individualized health plans. These are students that we focus on, but the concepts of youth health transition are broader than that. They are for everyone. We believe this process of transition should start in early adolescence, even as young as 12, with some of the tools that we have, some of the skills that you can build. And so what you have is this process of transition where the young person is learning skills, developing self-advocacy, and going up the on-ramp. And then you have this transfer of care that takes place between 18 and 22 years old. This is when they either move from a pediatrician to a primary care doctor, a different primary care doctor, or they change systems from the adolescent youth healthcare system into the adult system. Sometimes the visits can change, sometimes the expectations of lab work, there can be a lot of changes between the adolescent and the adult world of healthcare. And so that's the transfer of care. And then we believe that health transition isn't over until that youth is firmly on the down ramp and is being seen by adult care and has set themselves up to see their adult provider. Again, you can imagine how complicated this can get when the youth has multiple disabilities or complex care, with the number of transfers of care that need to take place, and then the number of adult doctors that need to get established. And so what we've done is we've tried to build up this part of the system with skills and knowledge for youth and educators and community members to help them get ready for that transfer of care, have a solid transfer of care, so then they can hit the off-ramp and be seen in adult healthcare. So we are supporting not just families, but we also do trainings for healthcare providers and organizations. We have a transition learning community that y'all are able to join. If you go to our website, there's a link to be able to join the learning community. We have that website, community outreach. And then of course you'll find us at, when we get back into in-person, we'll be at resource fairs, transition fairs, anywhere that we can go, talking about healthcare transition.
Wasn't last week just one with the Children Come First conference?
We were live out at the Children Come First conference, talking regional centers and healthcare and talking to a lot of real cool families.
Yep.
Really enjoyed that.
We should see about getting the recordings for the main keynote speakers.
Oh man, she was good. And
Both of them.
Yeah,
both of them.
You're right.
We should figure out how to put that on here.
Good point. We'll try. I just got a notice that they will probably, hopefully in a week or two. So then I'll find if I can get the link to that.
Cool.
So what are we going to do tonight?
Mostly talk about healthcare transition, introduce different transition readiness assessments, talk about 8 tools used for healthcare transitions, and basically how to talk to the youth about healthcare and how they can advocate for themselves.
Awesome. You want to tell the story about this picture?
That picture is all the way up in Door County. And if you've been to Door County, it is very beautiful. The stone we are on has subsequently been flooded over. There is no more island.
It's submerged.
It's a submarine now. It's a submarine.
True.
And it won't be resurfacing.
No, and you probably want to stand on it now.
No.
Did you want to stand on it back then?
No.
Not really. So I, of course, promptly just made you go out. You can tell by that smile on your face that I forced you out on that rock.
No.
So how did you manage to go stand on that rock that's in the lake?
Step by step.
Cool. Do you remember some of the steps that you took to be able to get out there?
You went first, then mom went first, then my sister went first, and I think one of my cousins went first because we were up there for I believe my grandparents on my mother's side's 50th wedding anniversary. So round of applause for them, very quick. And then I went out there with you, and I believe it was mom that took that picture.
You are absolutely correct. She is the photographer of the family. Much better than I am.
Definitely.
My people tend to not have heads or feet or parts of body parts are missing whenever I take pictures.
And mine are mostly just undiscriminatively blurred.
Yeah.
For some odd reason, I can't get a good picture.
So yeah, we were patient. We took our time. We modeled what it was like. We reassured you. We let you get used to the environment.
Yep.
And then finally went out. It was a process.
Much like healthcare transition is a process.
Exactly. And it is a process of moving into the adult model of healthcare.
Yay.
So who needs to think about transition? Who do you think, Hunter?
Teachers, teenagers, youth, their families, guidance counselors, healthcare providers, insurance companies,
Yeah.
the ADRCs, you to help out families, got transition, the federal government, the state, a lot of people.
There's a lot of people who need to think about healthcare transition. And why do you think it's important for youth, young adults who have a disability like yourself or a special healthcare need to think even harder than other folks about it? Why is it so important for people with disabilities?
Because it might be harder for them to understand what it means to transfer care.
True, is they may have trouble processing what someone is saying to them. And so it may be a little bit harder to understand that they need to transfer or when they need to transfer.
Mhm.
Can you think of any other reasons? What about kids that have complex care needs?
It will be harder for them to get the same needs in a different healthcare model.
There may not be the exact one-to-one match for their specialist.
No, it might be
Exactly.
a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1.
Yes, or it may not exist. And so they
Hopefully
have to,
it
I know, but it sometimes can be hard to find those adult specialists for some of the kiddos. So it may take a little while to find that adult specialist. So if we're dealing with a bunch of specialists, we need to think about, okay, who's going to be on that receiving side? Who am I going to see over on this ramp?
Yeah, true.
The other reason is that people that are relatively healthy, if they don't have this transfer of care, they're going to be fine for a while, right?
I wasn't.
You weren't. Well, that's because you're my son. Therefore, you have my abnormal genes. And so you are abnormal like I am.
Don't you just mean different?
Okay,
Just
we
use
could go,
different.
we can go different. And so, but with the complex care, it can become a medical emergency
Yep.
if they don't have that health care and they don't transfer well. They can't afford to have interrupted care, to take a break.
No, they do not.
Some people, they can get by without seeing a doctor for a year to two. A lot of our kiddos with special health care needs and disabilities, they
Not
can't,
so much.
yeah, they can't have that gap.
No.
Is they have to have that smooth transfer.
Yep.
So why is health important? Why does it matter, Hunter?
Increased independence, a success in day-to-day life, opportunity to go to universities, colleges, trade schools, all that sort of crazy secondary education and job, entering the workforce.
So why those are all areas that's important, but what does health have to do with independence? What does health have to do with day-to-day life? What's it have to do with secondary education? What's it have to do with employment?
Well, so long as you're healthy enough to move yourself out of your living environment, you can have increased independence. You can easily go out to see friends, family, try and enter the secondary education system by going to physical campuses and everything and talking to the students there about, hey, is this a good college for such and such degree and everything? And vice versa, you can easily go find a application and everything by talking to the right people and doing networking to find a job. I am still on that networking stage.
You are on the networking stage, but even in that networking stage, and as you've worked in the past,
Yep.
and you've gone to college in the past,
Yep.
but every day you get up and you go about your day.
Yep.
Do you find that easier to do when you feel healthy?
Yeah.
And how do you know when you're healthy?
When you can get up out of the bed and not feel like a giant sack of crap.
Thank you. So for you, not feeling like a giant sack of crap is a way that you would describe being healthy.
Yep.
And I think that feeling healthy is different for each person.
Yep.
And sometimes when you have a disability or special health care need, you really need to learn about what does healthy feel like.
Yep.
Because when you're healthy, you're able to do more in your day-to-day life.
Very, very true.
You're able to go to school.
Yep.
And you're able to do consistent work.
Yes, sir.
And so health, being healthy and understanding how to get healthcare is foundational to success with the rest of the transition stuff.
Correct.
All right, time for a quiz.
Yay, quiz time.
Quiz time, because we have a bunch of educators on the call.
Yay.
All right, so quiz. Normally in America, what do you think of when you hear the age 16? What transition occurs?
You get your driver's license. Took me
Yeah.
3 tries.
You know, it took me about 3 tries too, for different reasons. But
Yeah,
why?
because you flipped the car.
I didn't know. That was mom. Mom flipped the car. I did not flip the car. I rode over cones. I swear they moved. But anyway, so no, I did not get. And once the car flunked, it wasn't my fault. The car flunked. Okay. But you and driving, let's just talk a little bit about driving.
Yes, that's.
It took you a little while.
Yep.
Why did it take you a little while before you got your driver's license?
You wanted a really good driving teacher. Mom was an okay driving teacher. The online courses really didn't help much
Yeah.
beyond teaching me the rules of the road. I swear the second tester had it out for me. And we also had to go to Janesville.
Well, we chose to go to Janesville.
I know, but we had to go to Janesville.
But do you
because of Madison
remember?
BMD.
Do you remember the conversation you had with me when we went and renewed your temps?
That I didn't want to drive?
No, you never didn't want to not drive. It's a lot of negatives in there.
Yes. Yes, it
But
is.
what you said to me was that you wanted to make sure that you were comfortable before you got your license,
Yep.
that you really understood how everything worked.
Yep. And I'm possibly one of the safer drivers out there beyond semi-trucks, police officers, and ambulance drivers.
You are a very safe driver.
Oh, and fire trucks.
Yep.
Fire-
No, you
people who
do
drive
a
fire
really
trucks.
good job.
Firefighters.
But
there
it's
we go,
that
that's what they're
whole,
called.
it's that whole sense of at 16, most people are getting ready to drive. And so you got your temps, but you took your time. You
Yep.
went on your path. You took the test when you were ready for the test.
I
And
still
so
think
it
that
could be
second
very
tester had it out for
individualized.
me.
It could be. I never know. Age 18, what do you think of?
Voting.
Yes, very important.
Becoming an adult.
Oh,
for healthcare.
Becoming an adult for everything,
True. Yeah.
right? Not
Yeah.
just healthcare, but that's it. That's the big, whew, you're an adult.
Yay.
Mhm. You are responsible. You can enter into contracts.
Yay.
You can get sued. But you
Yeah.
also have a lot of rights then, like voting,
Yep.
that you didn't have before you were 18.
Yep.
And then age 21. In Wisconsin, what do we say age 21 is all about?
You get alcohol, which you must drink responsibly.
Yes, but the overriding message of all of this,
Is the big A word adult.
yep, and everybody, we hope, is going to hit that 18-year-old and become adults, even friends with special healthcare needs and disabilities.
Yep.
Okay.
Some of them have no choice.
Well, most of us, yes, we can't go back. And so
Well, yes, because a time machine hasn't been invented yet.
maybe no, we won't get into that. But so the important thing is that we know 18 is coming. We know
Yes.
that time of transition is coming.
Yep.
And so how can we stay a step ahead so that when we hit 18, when the kid and everything becomes a young adult and becomes an official adult at 18, that it's not a cliff they fall off of, that it's not a wall that they run into, but that they are prepared, that they're a step ahead so that when they hit 18, it's that natural transition and onto the off ramp. So how do we do that?
Through the ADRC and talking about it to said teenagers,
Yeah,
using gut transition.
got transition. That's a great idea. What
Yeah.
do they have?
Oh, a very fun readiness assessment and everything. And yes, it has been translated into Spanish as well.
That's true. And they just came out with the transition readiness assessment designed to help incorporate health transition into the individualized education plan, your IEP. You remember you had an IEP?
No,
You had an IEP. Trust me. I went to the meetings.
I didn't.
Well, we weren't that good back then. We're getting better where you should have been leading your IEP meetings. But that's neither here nor there. That's gone.
Yes,
Back
yeah.
here.
Right, yeah. Focus.
So Transition readiness assessment. Why do we use, what's the purpose of a transition readiness assessment?
To teach transition and how to help people take an assessment.
Yes. And so an assessment is where you can sit there and say, okay, I'm good at this. I may not be so good at this. Hey, I don't ever need to learn that. And the transition readiness assessment is the same way. It's just a topics transition.
Yep.
So you go through, stuff like, hey, I know how to ask the doctor's office if I need accommodations. I know how to do that. I know how to make my own doctor's appointments.
Yep.
Stuff like that. And so you can have a student go through and figure out what it is that they want to work on, what it is they need to work on, basically the skills that they need to develop.
Yeah.
And then those skills can be written from the transition readiness assessment. They can be transferred into the IEP. And so health can transition, which got transition,
Yep.
which you're familiar with.
I'm familiar with what they do. I just never took one because it wasn't out during my time. And I'm sounding old. I'm only 23. This guy's old. By the way, can we get some happy birthdays for my dad in the chat? Because today's his birthday.
Yep, I am working very happily, spending my birthday talking about health transition. So there are sample goals that Health Got Transition has come up with about the readiness assessment. And so, one of the basics is I can name my learning differences or talk about my disabilities. And so we can write into the IEP that by the end of the IEP cycle, the student will be able to say out loud or spell out or thank you everyone, or enter into their cell phone the names of their medical or their mental health diagnosis. So it's important so that people understand who they are and what is going on with them.
Yeah.
Like if I would say, okay, Hunter, we know that you said you have a disability. How would you describe your disability?
Chaos.
Okay. How would you name your disability?
Autism, anxiety, and depression.
Okay. And would you be able to talk about what your autism looks like to your doctor? Would you be able to explain that to him?
Yes.
And your anxiety, I know you can because you just did it.
Yep.
At Children Converse Conference.
Same thing with my depression.
So you have learned how to talk about your autism and talk about your anxiety and talk about your depression.
Yep.
That didn't happen overnight. And you certainly weren't talking about that at 15 or 16.
I wasn't diagnosed with any of those things at 15 or 16.
Anxiety.
Beyond anxiety and general learning disability.
Learning, yeah, exactly. But you learned how to talk about yourself in your medical instance.
By the way, you made this slide earlier today, didn't you?
This is a new one. Yeah, I sprung it on you.
Yes, you did, because I'm so used to seeing the readiness assessment
in
pop
orange
up immediately afterwards.
So if you don't like the one specifically made in blue for the IEP to work into IEP goals, they have a number of other readiness assessments available. Some for intellectual developmental disabilities, one for parents. They've been translated into Spanish. And all of these are downloadable and you can change them.
Yep.
You can make them your own. So I really like this idea of readiness assessments, of the fact that as we talk transition and we're talking setting goals and taking assessments, there is the healthcare readiness assessment that students can take and that schools can administer so that you have that starting point and you have your goals laid out, and then you can move forward and accomplish those goals in the IEP. So big fan, readiness assessment, gottransition.org.
10 out of 10 would definitely recommend.
And we'd also recommend,
you jumped way too far ahead.
We would also recommend Health Transition Wisconsin.
Yes, because you technically sometimes work with these people.
They do.
A lot more than God.
They do.
A lot more than God Transition.
I know. You've worked with God Transition more than I've worked with God Transition.
True.
Yeah. Okay. So we have local resources in Wisconsin that we've gathered at Health Transition Wisconsin. And what we've done is our basic trainings all include talking about what we believe are 8 health tools. So we're going to talk briefly about each of these tools. You're going to talk about each tool, and you're going to sort of explain how you utilize these tools and are utilizing these tools in your transition, because you're transferred and you're doing pretty much everything over here, but there may be a couple things that we're still working on.
Very bumpy road.
It is a bumpy road. Yeah.
And there might be a landmine or two thanks to depression, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, because we have mental health that we need to worry about as well.
Yep.
Absolutely. So it could be a bumpy road.
Yep.
But we can be prepared. We can have tools ready for
You
us.
can be as prepared as possible.
So talk a little bit about, well, actually, this one, I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to take a drink of water. And which one do you want to talk about first?
I'm going to start off with my favorite story, my story about getting a dietitian.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
So sorry, no water for you right now.
No, I'm going to take water because this has to do with making decisions. It has to do with adult providers. It has to do with making appointments.
Yes, it does.
So yeah, go ahead and I'm drinking my water. You tell your story.
So one day I basically asked my adult care provider about gaining weight healthily. I am severely underweight for my peer group, age group. There we go, not peer group, age group. So he recommended going to see a dietitian. And when I was leaving the house to go to my dietitian appointment, my parents simply asked me, "Where are you going?" And I told them, just blank-faced and all, "I'm going to see my dietitian." I didn't have a dietitian until I set up said appointment for the dietitian.
So we
Still
had
need to
no
find
idea.
that paperwork.
We had no idea that he had reached out and contacted a dietitian. He was 18 or so at the time.
Yeah, about 18,
19. But we were used to talking through all that and helping, but he was able to do all of that himself.
Yeah, and it was actually pretty fun doing it for myself.
What were
Because
some
it changed from not being able to make any form of appointments at all, not even answering, well, not even calling the people properly. I had to rely on my parents to do that.
Mhm.
And then slowly going into setting up my own appointments. And then I discovered my chart.
What do you like about my chart?
Everything.
So what do you use my chart for?
Setting up appointments, checking my medical history, paying for said appointments, checking what medications that are doctorly prescribed,
Mhm.
checking who's on my healthcare team, what hospitals I primarily go to. Yeah, that's pretty much all I use my chart for.
Cool. And how do you get to your appointments?
Driving.
And how did you accomplish that? Because back in the beginning, you really didn't want to drive more than just around Stoughton where you knew where everything was.
This is me we're talking about here.
and
My
your
sense of
doctor's
direction is
now-
bad.
Yeah, so's mine.
Mine's worse than
But
yours.
your doctor's in East Madison.
Yes.
So how did you go from just being comfortable in the neighborhood only to places you've known to be able to drive East Madison?
Google Maps and GPS.
So you found tools that were going to help you get there.
Yes.
And now you use those tools without my help.
Yep.
I have not Google mapped or GPS for you for a long time.
Correct.
Or made an appointment for you.
Correct again.
Awesome. Now, let's talk to a little bit about health insurance.
Yeah.
Do you
My
know what-
sister did not really learn that well.
So what do you know about health insurance that your slightly younger sister did not learn?
That I need to stick with the hospitals that the insurance company will pay for and not go out of house or out of payment plan. What is it called?
Network.
Thank you.
You're
Out of
welcome.
network.
So the difference between in-network and out-of-network doctors, and
Yep.
there is a cost differential.
Yeah, she spent about around $250 to $300, $500.
Yep.
What did she need to go in
It
for
doesn't
again?
matter. That's
Yeah,
her
true.
health business, not yours.
Right, yeah.
But yes, so I had not taught her well about the difference between in-network and out-of-network care.
I
learned
know it.
in-network, out-of-network care. You know
Yep.
how to find a doctor that's in your coverage network.
Yep.
You also know what a copay is.
Yep. I also learned to pay your medical bills.
Yes, you did.
Collection companies scare me.
Yes, is that you need to pay attention and pay your bills on time.
Yep.
And this was a learning experience.
A horrifying one, yes.
Absolutely, but you've learned it.
Yes. Yes, I have.
Fantastic. So what do you do with, I know you're not on many medications right now, but
No.
I know that you do take some vitamins and supplements.
Yep. Oh, that's something mom needs to get more multivitamins for myself. Can I borrow a couple of your Flintstones?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we can remind her, but but you historically were not really good at remembering to take stuff every day.
Remembering what?
Exactly. So how do you manage to take these pills every day?
It was a very short but long road through my mother at first using a pill organizer, then me filling up the pill organizer, and now I'm just taking one pill out of the bottle every day with meals.
Yeah. So first it was laid out for you,
Yep.
and there was always pills in there.
Yep. Magical pill fairy, that is the mother.
Yeah, so you didn't have to worry about it. And then your next step was you put the pills in yourself.
Yep.
And then eventually you're like, you know what? I don't have to separate these all out. I know I take this one and I take this one, I take this one. And now you've got it.
Multivitamin, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin B.
Good job.
Yep.
And so you also know what it is you're taking.
Yep. Don't know what effects it has on my body, but I know what it is.
And that's another area that we need to work on, is because when you do deal with medications, you should know what it's supposed to be doing to help you so that you know it's working, and so you know when it's not.
I just know one is a supplement for sunshine.
Because if it doesn't work, then maybe you should try something else. Yes, your vitamin D is because you generally are not out in the sun enough.
I love the outside. I just don't like the sun.
And spoken like a good Wisconsinite. Okay.
I tan
So
very
many,
easily.
yes, you do. Now, the other thing that we really talk to families about where healthcare is concerned, and we'll talk about this in a couple of weeks, is the area of supported decision-making. Because
yes,
the question is, who's going to make my health decisions when I turn 18?
Yep.
Like you had the question of who's going to make your health decisions when you turned 18.
Mm-hmm.
We decided that you were able to make those decisions, but we also made sure that you knew you could talk to us about it.
Release of information form.
Right.
Very good form when it comes to MRIs.
So we had to have a release of information form when you went in to have an MRI.
Yep.
When you had a brain scan.
Machine.
Because we wanted to see the brain scan too, and we wanted to be able to talk to the doctor, and we realized you're 18 and we hadn't had a release of information.
He didn't believe I had one.
We were very excited that they found a brain.
You were very excited
Yes.
that they found a brain.
I'm
I
very,
only
very
knew I
happy.
had a brain.
Oh, okay, Scarecrow. No, that was hard. Tin Man. No.
Tin Man was hard.
Scarecrow
Lion
was
was
brain.
good.
Scarecrow
Scarecrow
I
was
was right the
brain.
first time. Scarecrow.
Yes, you were right.
All right,
Wizard of
Scarecrow.
Oz. Come on.
Or Wicked.
Wicked.
Ooh,
That was
good
really good.
musical.
There we go.
Very good.
Back on
musical.
track.
Back on track. So this whole question about who's going to make my medical decisions. And so
Mhm.
we talked about the release of information.
Yep.
And so that's just a basic paper that says what I can and cannot talk to the doctor about
Correct.
for you.
Yep.
There's also power of attorney
Oh,
for
gosh,
healthcare
that is a can of
and then
worms.
for estate, where someone else can make those decisions for you, either in case of emergency or all the time.
Yep.
At the far end, we have guardianship,
Oh,
where
boy.
most of your rights, certain rights, can be taken away by law because you'd be declared incompetent. Is
Yep.
basically what it is. And then in the midst of all of that is this concept called supported decision making that we'll learn about later in December, where you legally have people that can be with you in meetings and help you make those decisions. And you were talking earlier about understanding
Mhm.
about the next steps and understanding what was going on. So
Yeah.
you can have someone with you to help you understand, and
Yeah.
maybe even to help you be understood.
Yep.
But the power of those decisions still rests with you.
Yep.
You are still the decision maker.
Yep. The only one we haven't talked about on this list is emergency contacts.
Do
You
you,
hit everything
do you
else,
have
but-
emergency contact somewhere?
Yes, in my phone that I need to carry with me more often. I keep forgetting to do that.
When you leave the house, you should have your phone with you. Yes.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way last winter when my car really wouldn't start.
Yeah.
Well, no, it did start the engine. It just didn't want to go above 5 miles per hour.
That's a very safe car.
It was very scary.
True. And then
I'm
the
so
other
glad I chose
tools that we
road
talk
instead of
about,
the
and
main highway.
we have other tools that we haven't talked about include a health summary, which is, when you
Briefly
think about this
explain that with my
transfer,
chart.
that's true. With my chart, you make sure that the important things that you want the doctor to know as you transfer the care are there. And that's also true about me, because think about the fact that a lot of times we spent maybe up to 18 years with the same doctor. And if we're going to transfer to new doctors, what is it about how I get along with this doctor that
Yep.
I want my new doctors to know?
Yep. And to make sure you click with the doctors and that your previous doctors understand that you are transferring care. My pediatrician did not know that.
Yeah, we didn't have the best transfer experience with your
No.
pediatrician.
Really good pediatrician, not that knowledgeable on transition, but anything else he was good at.
So what about your current adult provider?
Ah,
Do you like your adult provider?
yes,
What do you like about your doctor?
everything.
Like what?
The fact that he is good with jokes, has a great sense of humor, always, despite mess, I know he has a smile on his face.
True.
Understands who I am compared to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Same main doctor, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
He introduced me to him.
So that's one way to find an adult provider is talk to your parents, talk to other people about who they
Yeah.
use and who they think you might work.
Networking
That
is a very
networking.
good key.
Sometimes you have to talk to your insurance company to say who's
Yeah.
open, who's available, and you
Yeah,
hopefully,
that's a small can of worms.
yeah, because hopefully you have the chance to check out a number of doctors because you may not always click with the first one or with their
No.
team
Yep.
because you actually have a healthcare team that
Yep.
works with you.
Yep. And I click with them very well.
Excellent. So healthcare transitions, I believe, are helpful. Learning about healthcare is helpful in so many different settings.
You got about
Is-
3 minutes to summarize everything.
And we are just about there. Do you see the next slide coming up is
Yes,
resources? I
it
know
is.
time has just
By the way, you
flown from
have
us.
tax view
Okay.
selected with the mouse by accident when you
Oh.
scroll down. I'm talking
Oh.
about the next
Okay.
slide. I didn't want you accidentally double clicking like you did earlier.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I was wondering where that was going.
Yeah, I don't want you to break the computer.
So to achieve success, I believe that healthcare transition can be taught, skills can be learned, knowledge can be gained, and actions can be taken.
Mhm.
And healthcare management in clinics, obviously, but also important for employment,
Yep,
independent living,
yep,
post-secondary schools,
yep.
Can
And
be-
high schools
can be written in, yes, and high schools can
and
be
elementary
written
schools.
into, yeah, that's the whole sense of staying a step ahead, isn't it?
Yep,
Good job.
they should start talking about healthcare transition at least by 4th grade. At least get readiness assessments out to 4th graders.
What would you, I'm not sure about that. What would have been important for you in 4th grade to know about health transition?
What it means
What sort of
and
skills?
how it would impact my life.
Okay, so the fact that you would someday be in charge
Mm-hmm.
of your health,
Yep.
what sort of skills could you have worked on in 4th grade? Or what sort of skills did you work on when you were younger?
Beyond breaking pencils and pens.
That was not a healthcare skill.
I know. I'm trying to think.
We worked on you to make your own appointments,
Yes.
and that was a process as well. Didn't,
Much like a blender processes food, it did not go well because we
Did
had
not go
blood
well.
grades.
it did not go well. You always checked yourself in.
Yep.
We had you go up and talk to the doctor. And then what we started with your pediatrician was having you spend time alone.
Yeah, he did not fully understand what that meant.
Did not, but that's part of self-advocacy.
Again, really good doctor, just not really good at understanding.
Did understand
transition.
transition. And so with self-advocacy, it's that sense of this is my doctor, this is my healthcare, I am in charge of it. So
Yep.
I need to understand who I am, what my healthcare is,
Yep.
and then I need to advocate.
Yep. Let's
For
get those
myself.
resources for the lovely people.
Sounds good. So for school, of course, you all have heard of the Transition Improvement Grant. Hopefully you also
TIG.
know that there is an app that you can fill out with your students and work through
Yep.
post-secondary transition planning.
Yep.
And there are parts of that that can include healthcare, and that you could put healthcare included in that. A
Here's
little bit
something
more
about
about
self-advocacy.
self-advocacy. What I like is the definition somebody said, it means that you get to choose when to pick your battles.
Yeah.
So we don't have to always be in charge of everything. We can
No.
always ask for help. One might,
Asking for help is not something I do regularly.
and it's one of those things that we learn to do.
Yep. And
is
I
that
still
we
have
have
to
to
work
learn.
on.
Yeah, and you learn by doing.
Yep.
And so slowly but surely, again, process.
Yep.
I know
Much
that
like-
you're about process, and I know that you always
Yep.
talk about taking your time and
Yep.
doing it on your time frame.
Yeah, just wanted to get to the brief timeline for
Yep.
Wisconsin.
So what we're looking
athletics.
at is in Wisconsin, there are some things that medically after age 12 you can get consent to. The post-secondary transition plan should start at 14, should be working with your Aging and Disability Resource Center that we heard about. And if you missed that, we have a recording. Thank you. And then 17 and 9 months, you can start to look at the courts if guardianship, but I would encourage looking at supported decision-making as well.
Yeah, guardianship is a can of
Um,
snakes that no one should really open unless it is the last resort.
Sometimes it's necessary.
Yes, yes, it is. But sometimes it should become the last resort if supported decision making can be done and if the person is not very big on self-advocacy.
Yeah, if there's a safety issue.
Yep.
And so the transition care, the health care transition timeline that we've talked about is, even at age 12, you can start to talk about, what is the policy? How are we going to transfer this care in 6 years? Start talking about planning that at 14, start building the skills, do the readiness assessment.
Got transition again.
Yeah, my Yeti. And yes, gottransition.org. There's 6 core elements. So then we asked other parents,
Oh, yeah.
what do people want to know? And
Yeah,
they
that
say,
book that we ran out of.
exactly. Said make a
That you need
plan,
to order more of.
record everything. And if I could, I would. Break
can't
things into smaller tasks because they're out of print.
Oh,
Make the things into
Oh, that
smaller
sucks.
tasks. And don't be surprised if some things take longer than expected. We are dealing with a very large industry in healthcare. And so sometimes that can bog things down.
and we're only human.
True,
Nothing we create will ever be perfect.
true. Ask questions of others involved, get to know other parents who have a similar experience, but most of all, be kind and gentle with yourselves.
And take your time.
Yes, take your time. As education and other professionals, greatly encourage you to have students complete the readiness assessment, start those conversations with the students.
Yeah.
Visit our website. There's a workbook that goes with one of our trainings that is there. And talk to the IEP team about incorporating healthcare into the transition planning time. Talk to your primary care specialist, make sure that you know where your ADRC is. Luckily in Rock County, we have an awesome ADRC that spoke with us last time, and make sure you take a deep breath and stay a step ahead.
Yep. Got transition, health transition, wisconsin.org.
We'll send these out to you after the
Yep.
presentation.
Pacer, the Up to Me people with Wise Wisconsin. Very nice people, by the way.
Mhm.
Patch is another good one you should talk to and figure out where they are situated for teenagers who could use a bit more of hands-on talking and everything.
There are teens who do presentations on taking charge of your own healthcare.
Yeah,
and
they
how to interact
recently
with your
did
doctor.
one at the Children Come First conference
Yeah.
in Wisconsin Dells at Pearl Holly.
Pretty darn awesome.
Yeah, very awesome.
And the board of for people with developmental disability also has a self-directed healthcare kit, which you may want to check out.
Yeah.
If you have any other
fun
questions, please feel free to contact me.
Yep.
Now we would like to leave some time for any questions that anybody that might have.
Yes.
48, not bad, dude.
Technically
You
649.
did really well.
Yep.
So any questions about healthcare transition, you can either unmute or you can put it into the chat and we will read it out loud for folks.
Yep. Just any questions will do.
Anything you want to say that we didn't cover?
No, other than please tell me someone have an accurate count on the Yetis.
Don't know if anybody counted the Yetis.
Oh,
Just making sure that I have everybody recorded that was here. Looks like I do. So I guess the big takeaway is to think about how this can be incorporated into what it is that you're already working on with students or with your family, and consider healthcare transition before it turns 18.
Yep.
Please, before you do go on with your world tonight, take just a moment, give us a little bit of feedback. Again, any questions, let us know. Do you have any questions?
No.
I don't have any questions.
Does anybody out there have any questions? Anyone at all?
Bueller?
Anybody but Bueller?
Well, if not, I hope that you have picked up a couple of things. Really
Thank you,
enjoyed
Rebecca.
talking. Thank you, Rebecca. I love talking with Hunter about this, and hopefully that gave you a little different take on healthcare transition and made it a little more real for you.
And I will try to make sure this guy sends out the recordings from the Children Come First conference.
If I can post them, I will.
Yep.
I will do my best. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now. You are free to take the survey. You're free to get on with your night. I know many of you have many hectic nights. I will, as usual, get the recording and the resource sheet out to you. Thank you so much. And hopefully you have already signed up and you will join us for our next Transition Talks Tuesday, which will be on December 7th, when we'll be talking about disability work benefits and how to navigate work and support. So getting into the how do I continue on public benefits and work, which is always a question that comes up and it gets really complicated. So we're going to bring in an expert to talk to us about that.
I am not that expert.
Neither am I. That's why we got to bring somebody else in.
Yep.
But thank you all for being here. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.